Welcome back to Kevin Toll Reads, where today I'm doing Saturday Shorts, and we are here with 3 of them. And I went back and looked at my spreadsheet. I am up to 69 short stories that I've read and reviewed on Saturday since when I started this Saturday Shorts series back in August of 2024. And so I was really proud of that. And lately, as you probably have grown to realize, I've been doing more than usually the 2 that I normally do. I've been upping it to 3 or more. And I'm enjoying them. I got to be honest with you. Short stories, that form of writing and what it entails and what it provides me is a lot of enjoyment. And I'm really enjoying this series, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. And so let's dive right in the first one. And we are talking a short story, well, novella almost for back then, but the novella, Who Goes There? Written by John W. Campbell, published in 1938. This was originally published in the August edition of Astounding Science Fiction magazine. In this collection, the Science Fiction Hall of Fame, Volume 2A, edited by Ben Bova, I really have enjoyed what I've read so far, and I found another really fascinating author of science fiction by doing Saturday Shorts. I really enjoyed Poole Anderson's short story, what I read out of this. So I'm really digging this. And so Who Goes There? Novella was published in 1938 by Campbell. It actually spawned the movie The Thing that was directed by none other than John Carpenter in 1982. Yes, the John Carpenter from the Halloween franchise. It also, in my research, it was loosely based, this short novella from Campbell was loosely based into a 1951 film titled The Thing from Another World. And so a summary of this, we are in Big Magnet in the South Pole, and we're at this research facility called Big Magnet, and there is 37 workers of varying professions. You have psychologists, you have biologists, botanists, you have physicists, you have meteorologists. They're all down here researching in the South Pole, and they all kind of converge on an administrative building they dubbed Paradise House, where they talk about, the research team and talk about what's next. The South Pole is very cold, -40, -60 temperatures, and the research team uncovers a 20 million year old spacecraft where they seem to find an answer to what is causing some magnetic disruptions in the pole. And they also uncover something more devious than they originally predicted. They found something not of this world. And so that's the summary of this. I am being a little cagey. If you haven't seen the movie, then yeah, you kind of don't know what's going to happen. So I'm trying not to spoil here, but what makes this a really good short story or novella is there's a vast amount of characters. Of the 37 workers that are there on the research facility, about 17 people are named in this short story. They uncover an extraterrestrial life. They want to kind of study it to make sure it's dead, and things start to happen. What I enjoyed really a lot was the extraterrestrials, the being, the thing, its abilities to shapeshift, its abilities at telepathy. I enjoy all the speculation and psychological dread and terror that is ratcheted up as this story progresses. Its implications on what, during the conflict of what could happen to humanity across the world, and how after the conflict, how many people are actually left, or how many people were taken over by the thing. And so I'm going to leave it at that. There is an excerpt I wanted to read on page 89 of my collection. Gary sighed. You haven't been sitting here for 4 hours straight, while all their eyes silently weighed the information that one of us two, Copper or I, is a monster, certainly. Perhaps both of us. And so that's the dread as they're doing tests, trying to figure out who is a monster and who's still human, who hasn't been augmented or taken over. It's the psychological dread is is interesting in this novella. In terms of rating and overall, I give it a 4.4. It is a fun read. Campbell's writing is top notch. Another great sci-fi author that I found through this collection. I love the old school writing. I think it's a quick, fascinating read. Just a couple fun facts. This was written under Campbell's pen name, under the name Don A. Stewart. Another one that I found when I was researching, as I'm always intrigued on branching out into more sci-fi, that there was apparently a longer novella, a story that was posthumous manuscripts were found, and they were left at Harvard University. And so they started a Kickstarter, and they raised like $150,000 to actually publish. This has 12 chapters in this version, and apparently there is a slightly longer version with 14 chapters. I don't know where to find the unabridged version, so to speak, but I thought that was very interesting, especially that Harvard owned the rights to it as well. So that was really interesting. And so that's my take on Who Goes There by John W. Campbell. I rated a 4.4 out of 5. And so my next short story is from this anthology, Points of View, an anthology of short stories. And I got this beautiful little hardback book from Pat at Book Chat with Pat. She sent me some book mail recently. This was one of the entries. She knows how much I love short stories. There is a ton in here. And I went with the short story, The Bridal by Grisham Carver. It was published in 1983 based on my research. I could be off on that, but that's what I found. It's 17 pages in length, pretty much a fiction short story. And so the summary is Holotis and Betty and their two boys, they pull into an apartment complex in Arizona. It's the middle of summer, over 100 degrees. It appears that their station wagon, when they pull into the apartment complex, that everything they own is in this station wagon. And so Harley and Marge, a couple that are basically the caretakers of this apartment complex and work for the Fulton Terrace Corporation, who owns the apartment complex. Harley does a lot of the maintenance work. Marge kind of takes care of the administrative work, and she has a beauty kind of parlor set up in their apartment. She takes them on a tour, shows them apartment number 17, and Holotis and Betty say they'll take it. They provide first and last month in security deposit, and kind of the story takes off from there. So what did I like about this short story? Well, there's no real jump scare. There's no real dun-dun-dun moment in the short story. It's more kind of a Americana short story with some undertones of maybe different themes that are subtle. And so the setting for me was really, really good. I thought that was excellent. I'll kind of get into that. I love the kind of June, July timeframe. It's 100 degrees in Arizona, reminiscent of my childhood in summers. I really liked Carver's writing. It's matter of fact. It moves right along. I thought it was great. I really enjoyed some of the side characters, some of the other apartment dwellers. There's Connie, Nova, and Rick, her long-haired boyfriend. You know, she recently was divorced from a lawyer. And then you had Spuds and Mrs. Cobb. Spuds is not really named Spuds, but they call him Spuds because he works at a Denny's. Mrs. Cobb is Spud's second wife, and Mrs. Cobb works at the Kmart. Holotis and Betty, they start to get into routine. They try to find work. Their boys pretty much swim every day as teenagers and being out of school. And Marge, you know, through her beautician kind of setup, starts to talk to Betty as Betty is working as a waitress at a local place. And she starts to uncover a little more about Holitz, I think that's how you pronounce his name. Very weird name. And so she kind of doesn't really know, is he okay? Is he not okay type thing. And then there's Betty and Holitz and Connie and Spud, and they all kind of get together, and there's drinking, and they have a really late night. And then that's kind of the major confrontation of what ends up happening. Something ends up happening that I'm not going to spoil, but then causes the family to take off, and they need to get out of there. And I don't really have an excerpt, but I wanted to talk again about the themes because there's a couple of them. In one particular section, Marge is writing her name on the $50 bills that Holitz gave her as part of the security deposit and the first and last month's rent. And she's talking in the story from her perspective. She's talking about, well, I wonder where these bills will go. I wonder will they end up throughout the world, or throughout the United States. And you can almost sense that she's feels kind of stuck where she is. And I think it's a very humanistic type of pondering. And so I really kind of connected with that. The other thing I really connected with is the boys and the swimming. It really brought back to me a sense of kind of nostalgia, because we went on many family road trips, my family and my younger brother, and we always stay in a Motel 6 because Motel 6 was cheap. Plus, it back then it always had a pool out front, and we would always go swimming because it'd be summertime. It'd always be hotter in Hades, just like this story. And so we would want to spend a lot of time in the pool. So that brought back a lot of nostalgia as well. In terms of rating overall, I give this a 3.8. I think it's good. I don't think it's as great as the other two, the previous story and the next one I'm going to talk about. But it is a good, quick, short story. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I look forward to more in this anthology. And I'm glad I was able to finally read a Raymond Carver short story. Again, I really liked some of the nostalgia vibes it created, but I really enjoyed it. And that's my take on The Bridal by Raymond Carver. I gave it a 3.8 out of 5. And so now we are here with what I call the pinnacle story of this episode of Short Story Saturday. I'm back in Ford County Stories with John Grisham. I have read some great ones in here. In this one, man. This is the best short story I've read so far. Since I started in August, this story that I'm about to talk about, and I'm going to try to be succinct here, but it is the best short story I've read so far. So the short story in question here is called Funny Boy. It's 47 pages in length. It's in this Ford County Stories collection published in 2008 by John Grisham. The summary of the story is a story of Adrian Keene. And he is returning home to Clanton, Mississippi from San Francisco. Adrian is gay and he has AIDS and he's going to die. He's coming home basically to die. And there's a lot of local gossip. There's a lot of bigotry. There's a lot of misnomers and not understanding how AIDS works and how it can be transferred, and it's not contagious unless there's bodily fluids and all that jazz, because the setting, the story, the time period is in the mid to late 80s. And so there's that aspect. There's just not a lot of information out there just yet about the HIV virus. Obviously, him being gay and in the South has its own kind of themes and bigotry, and yeah. And Grisham does this so well. He could have been very heavy-handed with this, but he doesn't. But basically, again, back to the summary, he's coming home to die. And what is going to happen? There's a lot of mystery to his family. Is from money, but they don't know if there's any left, and will Adrian get any of it, and what happens when he dies? Is he going to, is the trust going to be passed around as the last heir? Is he going to pass that along to something? Is there anything left? And lo and behold, they the remaining people in the family, they don't want Adrian to stay in some of the where they're staying in the better part of town. So Clanton is basically still kind of segregated a little bit as well. You have the part of town where the Caucasians stay, and you have the part of town where the African Americans stay. And yeah, there's a lot of different major themes that are interwoven in this story that are really, really good. So let's talk about it. What makes it a really good short story? The bigotry creates a dynamic that you just pulls on your heartstrings. The rumors, the barbershop talk, how the town people act, the scenes with Mr. Sneed, the Herschels, the taxi. They don't want to take him on taxi to go to the library because they're afraid he's contagious. How gaunt, pale, disheveled he is. but yet he has class more than everyone around that's just bigots and not understanding and just dehumanized by this all. But yet you can't totally have kind of a hatred towards those people when you're reading this because of the times and the location. So it creates this very dynamic that is just reads so well. Miss Emporia, who ends up taking care of Adrian in Lowtown, which is the African American side of the town of Clanton, their relationship, how it starts, how it grows, how Miss Emporia kind of becomes alienated, even by the reverend in her own church. And that particular part of this story, oh my gosh, was so good. So I have an excerpt. I want to read it to you. And you plan to stay over there, not here in Lowtown. Believe me, Emporia, I'd much rather be here. They didn't want me back in Clanton. For years, they paid me to stay away. They disowned me, cut me out of their wills, refused to speak my name. So I figured I'd upset their lives one last time, make them suffer a little, make them spend some money. And so there is a reason Miss Emporia originally takes on a white male who is gay and has AIDS, and there's a reason for that. But the reasons change as you get to know people. And this story is very fitting of that. So in terms of rating and overall, I give it a 4.9. It's the highest rated short story I've ever read and rated on the channel. It's my favorite. Of the 69 short stories that I've done since last August, it's my favorite so far. Grisham continues to prove that this is a fantastic collection. Grisham can write a short story. He can write a story, period, but he can write a short story really, really well. It's one of the few short stories where I just was just in tears at some part because I felt for Adrian. I felt for Miss Emporia. I felt a lot of different emotions. And yeah, it's such a good story. It paints a realistic picture of the times, of the hatred, this misinformation, the heartstrings of a dying person, the change in perspective of an elderly African American lady taking care of this person and why she's doing it changes. And then the ending is so touching. It's great. If you get a chance to pick this up, Ford County Stories by John Grisham, if you are interested in short stories and you want to read a good one, there's several in here, and this one is phenomenal. I highly recommend it. And that, my friends, is my take for Short Story Saturdays. What a good one. What a good one to end on. Another great Saturday. I know this is longer, but I cannot state how much I love short stories. So I hope you're doing well, and I will talk to you all in the next one. Thanks.